just to introduce, I think we had a really nice session here on responsible AI, and I'm especially glad that we cover different aspects of this whole new world of responsible AI. And actually, we heard from Sara the different perspectives of different stakeholders and different phases of the AI development process. So Sara talked a little bit more about the project manager perspective and these phases that comes from the whole pipeline, from the ideation to development to deployment. And then we had Nuno taking a little bit more the data scientist perspective, the developers, how to compute these metrics, how to make sure that we are evaluating our models in relation to the best practices and these guiding principles of responsible AI. Jyoti brought us the data. Data is the heart of AI. And how can this data regulation impact the development of AI models, but also ensure, of course, the principles of responsible AI. And to finalize, Nia, your talk was really nice on bringing this perspective after deployment. So after the model is out there in the wild, everything that can go wrong, and how can we monitor and be mitigating these risks and be alert to discover these outcomes that may be sometimes not desired. So our discussion panel is about who is responsible for responsible AI. Some of the speakers already mentioned and touched a little bit this point, but this question of responsibility has been a point of discussion also regarding the regulation discussion, regarding how to make sure that so someone is accountable for a system, because this technology, the system itself cannot be accounted for something that is harmful or something that can go wrong. And I think behind this principle of accountability or responsibility, there is an overall desire that this technology, this artificial intelligence that is becoming a powerful technology, can serve the benefit of humanity and can be used in a beneficial way and to create positive outcomes. So this is a little bit behind all these discussions and all the talks that we heard today. So my first question, and I would like to address my first question to Jyoti, right? Sorry, your name is not. Can you repeat again?
Jyoti.
Jyoti, okay, let's try. Okay, so my first question is to comment a little bit on this legislation and this regulation proposal that has been one of the first initiatives to enforce and ensure this beneficial use of artificial intelligence. If you can comment a little bit these proposals and how can this impact responsible AI-based systems and products?
Okay, so I think this is kind of a moment where we basically try to think about things in hindsight. So there has been a lot of AI development, a lot of ML development for ages now. But with the rise of generative AI and models such as ChatGPT, it basically came to attention that the impact that it can have on general public. So I somehow feel that this is a good step forward, but a lot needs to be done. And even if with the EU AI Act being into discussion, we are just targeting a very specific use case or a very specific industry which is high risk. But that doesn't really cover a lot of other impacts that we don't really even know about today, right? So I think there is a lot of opportunity for having those discussions, trying to collaborate more with different diverse set of people to understand what are the challenges and then maybe bring that to the table. So I believe that EU AI Act is a good starting point, but I also feel that there is a lot that needs to be highlighted with with it.
Okay, thank you. And maybe to develop a little bit more on the alternatives, on other ways of ensuring that our AI development is beneficial, is for the sake of positive outcomes. Nuno, do you want to bring other perspectives?
Is this on? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add something on this topic of regulation. So one thing I think that risk-based approach is already being developed. That's cool. We are that makes sense. It's proportional depending on the use case. But we talk a lot about feedback loops on the product. So how to create feedback loops so we can improve the product. So perhaps we also should talk about flexibility on regulation. So we could have those feedback loops coming in, and if we have a new product such as ChatGPT that is a game changer, how can we then go off-road and test it somewhere, Because we need to have some rules in order to drive a car and go wherever we want to go. I know it's a poor metaphor. I didn't get to a better one. But sometimes we want to go off-road, and we should be allowed to go off-road so we don't stifle innovation and try a new thing. Yesterday on the talk about AI Act, I heard something about sandboxes, and perhaps that's kind of the things that we need to start here. About development, I think that it's quite sad in order to frame regulation and responsible AI and just be these two things. So it should be much greater than that. We should have more value in the products. The teams should be challenged. The team shouldn't be developing models, using the algorithms that they know, using the golden hammers. I know it's hard to look into different algorithms, to study different complexity, and to study new concepts and to broaden their tools. And I think that's what this topic means to me as well. So it should enrich the way that I develop the practice. Okay, just a mix of things.
Okay, thank you. So we have one question here from the audience, which I think it's Sara. Maybe you want to answer this first one regarding the red flags that PMs or data scientists should keep in mind in order to implement responsible AI.
Thinking about this one. There's a couple of red flags. If you're really starting this journey, I think if you don't need to say the words responsible AI, I think to start this journey. So, for instance, in the product management data science world, if you're not having a conversation at least about the risks, I think it's a red flag. If you're developing something only thinking about the impact and not thinking about the potential risks and having conversations, that's one red flag. I think the other red flag for me is really not engaging with the users. That's a really important red flag. If you're closed in a room and developing a product and a model and everything and not really be engaging with the users, that's another red flag for me. And then more as an advice, but I think Nuno already answered, there's a lot of conversations you can start to have if you're not really talking about the issue and like all these frameworks, the what was the name, fast one, right? Have some good starting points for conversations. So if you're not having conversations, that's also red flag for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, bring the issue to the table. So Nia, you talked about this human in the loop, this getting domain knowledge, expert knowledge, in order to be able to analyze and monitor the behavior of AI models after deployment. And human oversight has been proposed many times as a way of ensuring that there is a continuous human responsibility over an AI system. But in fact, so the experience between this interaction of humans and AI-based systems is still limited, and we know very little about it, actually. What is your take on this issue?
Well, first of all, I have a little bit of a problem with the idea of responsible AI. because in general, a lot of people like to take words that just sound nice without disregarding the theoretical background behind responsible innovation. Because I don't think it fully applies to the way AI systems are developed, because AI systems are developed in a very different way than software systems. So we shouldn't treat them like software systems, because they behave. For once, you have multiple degrees of freedom that you don't really experience with a software system. So that's one. And of course, human oversight is important, and everybody, AI Act also talks a lot about human oversight. But I think we should be very careful when we talk about human oversight, because humans have the tendency to believe a thing that is right 4 out of 5 times. So it's not about whether the human is overseeing every single decision that is being made. It's more about whether the human can oversee the decisions that are not correct. And the human has the capability and the knowledge to intervene when the decision is not correct. So that is, I don't have the answer on exactly how to do that. But that is, I think it's a very important reframing of the problem, because I hear a lot of people talking about, like, yes, human in the loop. Sure. There's a different term that I like more. It's called meaningful human control, which actually is very different than human oversight. It presupposes not that you are there as a human to oversee exactly what the system is doing, but you actually but it's rather you understanding what the system is doing, and you can interfere with this when the system is doing, which is of course very difficult when you have black box models. Even if with the black box models, the way information is structured and presented to humans can still achieve certain type of understanding in the human. So what I showed in the presentation on the expert human feedback is one of our attempts. For instance, one of the things my team and I are working on to understand how can different types of outcomes can be represented to humans in such a way so they can actually make, they can exert meaningful human control over what is happening. So it's not necessarily about oversight, it's more about can we actually control and can we make decisions, informed decisions on what the systems are outputting.
Mm-hmm. And you have different target audiences here, right? Because you have the end user of an AI system that can be more or less educated on,
yes.
on this field. And we have questions here also about literacy. And you were talking about expert panel that may be multidisciplinary and maybe include some...
Not necessarily. So when I talk about expert panel, so a lot of times whenever you talk about expert panel, the idea is that you would gather the experts up front. You ask them about what their values are, what kind of unintended consequences they kind of think the model might create. I think that is usually useful, but it's a very flawed concept, because the human mind doesn't really work like that. You cannot extrapolate to new things based on things you've never seen. So the human mind is a combinatorial machine. You can only think of things that are based on your previous experiences. And right now we have technology that we've never really had experience with before, that is acting in ways that we've never had experience with before. So it becomes very difficult to understand what that might look like. So what I think would be a much better way to deal with that is if we are continuously observing what the system is doing and then acting on it, because we have much more actionable insights rather than us trying to imagine what the model will do once it gets deployed. So that's one. And then yes, literacy is incredibly important, but I think we should also not not necessarily undermine, but kind of underestimate how much people actually know, because each and every one of us knows whether something is fair or unfair. Whether you can explain whether something is unfair or unfair, it's a very different question. Or why is it unfair? It's a different question, but you know that it's unfair. So when I showed the example with my bio and it suddenly said that I suffer from depression and anxiety because I'm a woman in a male-dominated field, you instinctively know that that's not necessarily fair, especially if you're a woman in STEM. You immediately are triggered by something like that. So I think people know more than we give them credit to, and it's really about the way we gather that feedback and the way, going back to that point, the way we present information to humans becomes incredibly important.
Okay, anyone else from the panel wants to comment on this topic? So we have here also a question about potential ethical dilemmas that you foresee arising as artificial intelligence continues to advance, and how should society address them? I don't know if anyone wants to It's a very difficult question, right?
I mean, there's always the ethical dilemmas, right? Unfortunately, ethics it's not necessarily evolved to a place where we can make the fast decisions that require us to make this type of systems requires us to make. Although there is a lot of work in ethics that is currently being done when it comes to certain frameworks on how we can make decisions and how we can make trade-offs. But again, what is ethical in one context is not necessarily ethical in a different context. So if we try to generalize ethical principles across different contexts, it becomes incredibly difficult. So there was this very nice study done by MIT in 2016, I believe, called The Moral Machine. And you can really see the differences of what someone in South America considers fair to what someone in Europe considers fair. So again, I'm going back to the whole context thing, but it's really important to understand contextually. Of course, there are certain things that are always morally wrong and morally right, more wrong like slavery. But a lot of the things and a lot of the decisions that we need to make are contextual. So it's incredibly important to think about the context.
Yeah,
Yes, no, go ahead.
yeah, just that's why it's so important to have different perspectives on the team, because at the end of the day, it's about trade-offs, and you need to assume that trade-off, if there's an ethical dilemma, there will be no perfect solution. So you need to have those discussions in order to converge from the values on the context where you're operating, and then decide on a solution. That's it.
Yes, for sure.
So probably just to kind of add on a lot of comments that are made, maybe one guideline that we can follow is trying to define certain baselines on the practices of organizations that has to be followed all the time. It doesn't matter. And then, of course, there are a lot of other aspects that you can discuss or maybe have trade-offs on. But I think there are certain baselines that needs to be followed in any circumstance, which probably are towards mostly high-risk situations.